call upon the gates of the east, the element of fire, the energy and the nourishment of the rising sun, the celestial beings of the sun, the higher dimensions. I call upon the gates of the north, where the air sits and our mind sits, and our ancestors, and all the white beings of the prophecy sit, the wolf bear, the white lion, the white wolf, the white fox, the white buffalo. I call upon the gates of the west, where the sun sets, where we go into our caves and see in the dark, where medicine sits. We nourish ourselves and find strength in our physical form, being here and now on earth. I call upon the gates of the south, the elements of water, where our emotions are, where our inner child is, where we dream and process everything we feel around the wheels of now. I call upon Mother Gaia, the mineral kingdom, the crystal core, the nations beneath us, holding us, rooting us. I call upon the outer sky above us, the sun, the moon, the planets, the stars, the celestial beings, the galactic federations. My highest connection to source, the light codes that I draw upon. May you lead me the best knowledge necessary for what I'm about to share today. I call upon the spirit within myself for courage to step in what you need to be and what you need to do, and why we're bringing this story forward today. Call upon the ancestors of the land that we all walk upon, the ancestors in your own DNA, those that are listening to this right now. This is a piece of all of us. A call upon the breath. Fill me with patience, fill me with calmness, fill me with clarity, fill me with the love and light that you are. Gracious, beautiful breath. So today I'm going to talk about something pretty dark, things that I've seen and witnessed as somebody who connects with multiple dimensions, multiple timelines, multiple beings. I'm sharing dark stories that are not meant for children. If you're parents or adults watching this, I think you should listen first and then choose if you want to share it with underage people, even though there are ancient ancestors. It's a parent's job and an elder's job to protect them. I share my smudge with you. This summer, I met the incredible spirit of Algonquin. It's on my Instagram page if you want a better look at the photo. Sorry, camera angles. So this spirit came to me in that space between asleep and awake. And I could see one giant eyeball. And I was looking for another eyeball. I thought, wow, this is a very big head. And the eyeball was shape, light, and movement through the strings coming together energetically to create the visual of an eyeball for me. for relatability. So I realized this eyeball was all that it was. There wasn't a second one. And this is when the being started transforming more and more in front of my eyes, revealing an energy, a spirit that pulled on all the different plant frequencies, mineral frequencies, fire frequencies, all the elemental earth beings that are here, mostly surrounding the plant and tree kingdom. He pulled these energies into his form and created a visual for me to be able to acknowledge that visual relationship, because visuality is a huge part of who I am. So he later expressed to me that he's the spirit of Algonquin, and he offered me a key. And he expressed that the key has only been given to 2 others once before, and that many know the teachings of Algonquin because they pass it down through their peoples and generations. But others know the secrets of Algonquin because they just are attracted to it and then come and take the knowledge that they need. But few have been offered this key, and I'm very grateful for that. And so many things transpired, but to keep it on the point of why I'm speaking today, he said he's going to teach me these teachings and these lessons, and I'm meant to share them with everybody. And in my mind, I'm thinking herbalism, plant medicines, things of that nature. So at the time, I had extreme ear ringing, and he did give me one teaching, which I'll share, in terms of the plant kingdom. And I had congestion and ear ringing. I was transcending very quickly, and my body was pushing things out. So he advised me to get the pitch. So the pitch is like the sap coming out of the tree, and it looks sticky. Sometimes it looks like a drip, but sometimes it may look solid, or like an amber stone. So he asked me to take the pitch. And I did this. I requested from the tree. I gave sacred tobacco. I introduced myself. So I did all of this with sacredness and honor. And he expressed to me to put boiling water on the pitch and breathe it in. And this would clear up all my sinuses, as well as help with the cellular repair that was struggling with my shift. So this was one of the medicines that he taught me, and I was excited, and I was waiting for more medicines, more teachings. And it wasn't about the plants. It ended up being about the people. And I saw many things. I would see these canoes coming up in the water, huge, huge, huge canoes with First Nations people like the Algonquin, the Anishinaabe of the area, and other nations. My education is at its early stages of all the names of the different tribes and people, so I apologize that my knowledge is limited in their naming. And so I would see all these different things coming up, and I would meet these elders, and I would meet inner earth people, and they were all talking to me about different times and how it's time to awaken to all of this, which we all know, but they were expressing their piece of that to me. That's for another story. That's about all multiple dimensional beings and their interactions with each other and their intentions and moving forward. So that's for another story. So I started seeing these things and interacting over time. And then we moved campsites. And this young girl, it looked like a native girl, very long hair down to her waist, standing stiff as a board. This is the spirit I'm referring to. Stiff as a board, her hair kind of hanging in her face, like head down with shame, shoulders up, wearing a very awkward little girl dress, like something you would put on a doll, like poofy sleeves and white and a little apron. It looked completely awkward. It looked like unnatural clothing. And I tried to, because I've gotten used to seeing beings like this, I often ask, how can I help you? And she didn't respond, but she was constantly within 5 feet of me, even standing in our tent in the corner. Definitely a little unnerving, but you could feel that she was at a loss. So I just let it go. And then we fast forward to moving to another campsite just up the lake. And I was going to sleep at night, and I saw the same girl. This is about 2 weeks later, and this time she's standing in the bush, and she is pointing. So I'm at there's several lakes that are connected by rivers. So where this campsite was a river, so smaller, narrower body of water, and she's pointing across the way. And I was a little shook, because I was like, okay, obviously she's following me, she's communicating with me, what's happening here? Because there was a whole bunch of other beings in the woods as well that were coming forward, that were just standing there and staring at me. And so it was unnerving. So I fell asleep. And the next morning I got up to go meditate down at the water's edge. And it was beautiful. And I see her there again. And so I was like, okay, I looked to where her finger was pointing. And it's all these trees. Now, I just want to preface this with telling you that I've been to Algonquin a couple of times, and Algonquin wasn't speaking to me, which is interesting because I channel often beings, plants, multidimensional beings, every single place that I go. And so it was interesting that Algonquin was holding back. It wasn't until this spirit of Algonquin who said, I am Algonquin, and offered me the key, that Algonquin started really opening up her stories to me and what was happening and what she wanted to heal. And so now come again to this moment I'm experiencing with this young, clearly a native girl in non-native clothing. And you could feel something not so good happened, and I didn't want to acknowledge that feeling until I had more information. So next, she's pointing, and I look over, and it's this thick, beautiful trees. And I'm looking at them where she's pointing, and right where she's pointing, it's one tree that doesn't have any leaves whatsoever. And it looks like she's going like this, like holding her hand out. This camera is hard to see the angle, but it looked like it looked inviting. So I consciously chose to leave my body, okay? So I gathered up all my cells through my breath, acknowledged them, separated it from my body, and then went over to the other side. And in front of me was a native elder. He was wearing loincloths. It looked like some form of skin. He was not wearing a shirt. He had on, he was definitely wearing some sacred items around his neck. But what was interesting is he was glowing, like a kind of like an orangey yellow, that tone of light when the sun is about to set, and you can see this golden hue on everything that it touches. This was the light that he was emitting. And I spoke with him, and he asked me who I was, and I said, well, this girl led me to here. And he said, oh, she wasn't buried. She was killed early. We lost her. She wasn't buried with us, so she's a lost spirit. And he told me how when and it's made their whole tribe a little bit lost. And then he showed me her mother. The tribe was still active in a sense, in another dimension, perhaps the fifth or sixth dimension, but here on Earth, they're not in a dimension where they're eating food. So she was just running back and forth, really lost in like a scattered state. You could feel that she had lost something, and she was looking for something, and she was panicking, and she couldn't break from this. She was in a state of chaos because of it, and wasn't able to accept the love of the people that were surrounding her in spirit form. She wasn't able to accept them because her child was gone and buried elsewhere, and she wasn't able to honor this child. So this was the beginning of the fall of their tribe. It turns out this woman was their medicine woman. And what had happened is they sent this child away to learn with a holy person of that area that had come in. So from the telepathic image he gave me, this appeared to be a Jesuit or either early religious people that came here to evoke their intentions. And so I got the information. I'm like, okay, so I need to find her bones. This is what you're telling me. And he said, yes. So I found the girl. She's waiting there for something, and I I expressed what I had learned, or she had been listening. It's kind of a combination when you're working in the electric universe. It's not a verbal language. There's many forms of communication happening. And I said, okay, can you show me where your bones are? And she couldn't remember. So uh, she started fluttering all over the place really quickly, really fast, like she would go from one end of the Algonquin Park to the other, just fume, fume, fume. It's like she was like, I can't remember, I can't remember. She was panicking a little bit. And then because she was panicking, she had a hard time holding on to the frequency that she had gathered to communicate with me. So what I did was I went into my light body. So I've done a lot of astral travel training, and there's certain abilities that I'm connected to. And so what I had done was I listened to the spirit around me, the breath around me, which is source and light and prime creator all around you. And I requested help and teachings, and they said, well, you need to become the light and you need to become the wind. And so I went into those elements, those earth elements. We all have those building blocks in our body. They are all a part of our light body and our knowing body. And so that's what I did. I actually matched my frequency to the light and the wind, and I was able to keep up with her. And then I found her and I got her in my eyes, in my sights. And I said to her, show me where your bones are. Go into your memories. So she tried to remember, and I followed her memory, and I saw her being killed. It looked like, I don't know, maybe it was about a foot long, maybe about this thick. It looked like something you would pump to lift something heavy, like a jack for a car. But it was from another time, so it was very rusted, and it had a lot of iron components to it. It was chunky and rusted. I mean, I hope you are receiving the visual that I'm also passing to you telepathically. And I could see that it just came down and cracked her head. It was effortless. It's like the weight of it just boom and cracked this hole in her head. And so I was able to follow her death to the point where she was buried. Like, though she's not in a physical form, she is still connected to her Akashic records, which is a term that a lot of us know. So I'm using that to try to help to communicate. So her light body and her information is still intact, but even though she's in a chaos state, so you can still follow that through the strings of the universe, through the information of the electric universe. And so I did. So I followed her memories and I found where she was buried. So it was under by a tree, and it was a long time ago. So I went down, down, down into the earth. I became one with the mineral kingdom and the earth kingdom, and I go down into the earth, and I found her, and it was very deep. Deep in the ground, mostly disintegrated. I saw a little fractions of the dress that she was wearing, that silly little girl dress that has nothing to do with First People's clothing. And there's little bits of that. And I saw some bones, but they were all like powdered and deteriorating. There's just like a little fragments of it. And then I found a skull, a perfect skull, with a hole in the top of it. And I had witnessed her getting killed with this hole. So I knew this was, just your clues along the way, aha moments. So this is what's occurring. And so then I'm questioning, well, how do I bring this to her people? This is solid, and right now I'm not solid. And I was being guided by this elder that had met me at the front of the forest, as well as the elements and the spirit around me. And I just asked the question, and it comes in. And what he said was, part of her spirit is, and her light is still in that. That's the part that you're going to pull on in the skull. So there's still she's still connected to these bones, even though she's all over the place. This is again a part of the multidimensional connection to us as beings, right? And there's a whole bunch of quantum mechanics, quantum string, quantum physics, and spiritual shamanic teachings that can explain that, which I should probably do it another time. So what I did was I used my life force energy and pulled with that, similar to how you would do a qigong or breath work. You pull on that energy. And so that's what I did. And I had her skull in my hands and I could see this hole. And then I took myself back to this opening where I was guided to in the beginning, where this elder was standing, and I passed him her skull. And then I saw her mother, the one who had been running back and forth, came up behind the elder. She turned around and showed her. She already felt it. She already knew. And she dropped to her knees. And I will never forget this sound, because it wasn't a sound, but it was a sound. It was all a part of every bit of creation around me. And it was a scream. It was a wail. It was a cry. And it was laughter. It was, it permeated every sense of everything around me. And I still feel it transcending through our reality, because it touched the web of everything that we were a part of. And so he had some type of sack, and he put the skull in a sack. And then I requested if I could join. He said, now we're going to do our ceremony. Now we're going to bring, reunite our family together in this death state. We're going to resolve this. So I requested if I could join them. And he said, not every ceremony it's appropriate, but I feel that at this point it is. I just want to also share that I have permission to share this. I would never share a story, even from a spirit, without their permission. I never, ever interfere with any being's boundaries, ever. And so I went in and I joined them. And so interesting. So they started a fire. Now, there was a fire, there's a fire pit, and the idea of a village center, but it was all light and all around us. So we were just in this realm of light, and whatever appeared to be physical in front of us, it was just because that's what we were focused on in that moment. Everything around us was just light, and you could definitely feel and see the tree energy, but they're light bodies. And so this is what I'm being told. This is what it looks like in the higher dimensions when you're still here on this plane. You just exist in the light of everything. So what they did was they created this fire, and then it looked like they made us stand on two sides, two triangles that were crossing in a stick, and they put this skull into a pot with water, and 8 women sat around this fire and in prayers. And they put this, it appeared like they were making a soup, right? They took this skull and they were cooking it over the fire. Not cooking, because that's obviously not the right word. Obviously, they were transcending its elements to bring it to the dimension that they're on for their resolution and reuniting. And so there was prayers happening to these women. They were toning and singing and chanting. And the elder said to me, we know who you are. We know what you can do. Can you please pull on the sun frequency to support us in this? And I was like, I didn't doubt it for a second. If he didn't doubt it, why should I doubt it? So I did. And I pulled on the sun, and it came down in strings. And then from my body, I created I guess a mandala or a sigil coming out of my body into these strings. It was my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions, my connection with source, my connection with the sun, my purpose of being in that moment. And they created this beautiful web. And the color was, again, it was that orangey yellow, that tone when the sun is setting just before the sky gets vibrant with rainbow colors. So it was that tone. And everything started spinning in a circle. And then we started dancing around them. And what was fascinating about this dancing around them is we were doing a dance that I knew somehow. So this is a part of my ancestry. And we were Raven dancers. And Raven in the indigenous teachings have been, is the one who brought us fire, the one who brought us light, among other things. But this is one of the stories. And so we were all these Raven dancers dancing in this circle, doing these elaborate moves and stomping and elaborate with our arms and like moving our heads up and down. And we're just creating this most insane vortex I have ever experienced. The multiple aspects that were occurring, I can barely express. It was like this incredible. Um, can you imagine a vintage machine that's mechanical, like a toy box winding, but all these winding toys? And it was layers and layers of these winding vibrational webs that were winding together in different directions and together and creating something. I, I can't even fully fathom it, but I felt it. And so when this was completed, the women who the 8 women around the circle then took the pot of soup with the skull in it, and they all poured it into these bowls. They looked to be carved out of wood, and they drank this soup. And I was like, oh, what does this mean? Like, obviously, it's very sacred and very primal and very ancient. And I was observing. So they drank this soup, and then they all went into prayers and chanting again. And these wisps of light and energy came out of their bodies and all came to the center, all 8 of them at once. And before my eyes, this child was reformed. They put his whole soul back together. Okay, so I don't know if anybody noticed, I'm now saying he. Turns out this was actually a boy. And this boy was the medicine woman and the shaman's child. And they had sent this child to go and learn from these Jesuits who were also connecting with source energy. They felt it would help with unifying and harmonizing the new peoples coming in. And they never saw their child again. So that's part of the significance of this. And there's more to my story. I'm going to be moving forward and filling you in on the things I discovered surrounding that, which are not very good. So this boy was reformed. The light was like blue and violet and a little bit of green, and again this orangey yellow light that was kind of surrounding. It was everybody's energetic fields. So this boy was reformed. There was celebration, and everybody started dancing. He joined everybody. There was kissing, there was hugging, there was laughter. They were whole again. It was like the entire people of that tribe healed once this child was healed and brought back to them. And the next time I was looking at him, he was communicating with me. We did a forehead to forehead communication, and these chanting were coming out of both of us that we knew. And then I just was so inspired. So I energetically grabbed my drum and I started drumming, and they all stopped and stared at me. They're like, "What are you doing? That's not really that's not how we do things spiritually here. Like, you didn't ask us to bring the drum." I'm like, I didn't. That's true. And you traditionally, this is the medicine that the women do in our community. We're going to be doing sun dancing now and sun singing. Can we teach you that instead of this drum that you're sharing? And I said, yeah. And they explained to me when I use the drum, they refer to that as people with 2 spirits, because I look like a female, but I'm doing things that are masculine. So they call that a 2 spirit. And I relate to this. I do. Though I'm more feminine than masculine for sure. So I was able to join in with the celebration with them, and the dancing, the chanting increased. It was completely aligned all the way above and all the way below with Creator, and you could feel the trees and the woods dancing. It was transcending through everything all around us. It was just insane. I was actually got lost in it. And then the elder came forward and he said to me, he goes, your human self is going to get really tired. We're going to be doing this ceremony for 9 days, and then another ceremony for up to a year afterwards. So you can come back and join us at any time. And so I said, okay, thank you. And I went back to my body. It took me a while to get back in my body because I was very, 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 very engaged. I was changed. And so I had to bring all this new light codes, all the information, the healing that we had shared together and co-created together went through everything. It permeated the entire globe, permeated every single tree, every mineral, every rock, every water, every animal, every human. It permeated everything. So the next day, we were visiting with friends of my partner, and I was telling them about this experience that I had had with Algonquin. Because everybody was saying, "Oh, you're such a psychic. You're so connected. I wonder what will happen to you here because so much spiritual things happen here." And I'm like, "Well, this is what happened." Again, I have many stories, but this I've been guided to share this with in this format. So I was telling his friend that we were visiting with, and he's looking at me with conviction, and he waits for me to finish, and he says to me, "Last year, we discovered a skull, a small skull, a child, a boy, with a big hole in it on one of the islands here off the rivers in lakes that connect the Algonquin Lakes." So that was really, if you ever doubt yourself as a healer, as a psychic, this moment just took all of that away. I'm like, wow, this is really powerful. Like, this is really happening. My purpose is really defined right now with this story. So they took us on a boat ride the next day to these islands, and the whole time, this man, a Caucasian man, he looked to have high collars, but I could only really see his head. I couldn't see his clothes. He looked to have short hair, and there was a black streak across his eyes. He was letting me have it. We were on this boat, and he was like almost hitting my brain and hitting my head. My headache was so intense that I felt like I was going to faint or pass out. Like I was under a pretty intense psychic attack. He was saying all kinds of things, and I just didn't understand him. It was very overwhelming. He was definitely very manipulative, very like, it's like he wanted to ensure a certain opinion before I witnessed something. Like, it just, you could tell that he was up to no good and was trying to eat crow or save something first or explain himself out of it first, you know? So we finally get to the island, and I get there, and this part. So the night before, this is important, and then I'll come back. So we're at the island. I'm going to pull us out of the island for a sec and then put us back in. So we're at the island, the night before, we're at the fire, and these native men came forward and women came forward around me, all wearing coats. One was a buffalo, one was a bear, one was a wolf. And they were all these beings that had people that had gone through deep shamanic work when they were alive and now walk with their spirit. And that's what, it wasn't a literal coat. There was no death or pain or in a non-sacred way. It represents the spirits that walk with them, the warrior spirits of earth. And so when I got to this island the next day, I saw some of these same warriors there. They were sitting at 5 different points on the island in a meditation or prayer position, and they were just holding space. I guess it was very chaotic for me. I was getting pummeled with information, flashes of people running, flashes of men laughing and drinking booze, flashes of kids in little weird doll-like dresses, flashes of native, looked like young people, not just kids, like children, but teenage children as well. All these different ages running and like looking behind them, scared and screaming. And then I would flash back to these men sitting there, these native warriors just sitting there holding space. And then I was flashed again to a ritualistic situation where they were taking these children, and this is where it's going to get super dark. So remember, I said in the beginning, please listen to this before you choose to let children listen to this. So these children were raped and murdered, and I was witnessing this. sorry, the things I've seen, I wouldn't wish upon anybody. I need to light some smudge before I continue. Try not to cry. I witnessed these children running for their lives, raped and murdered in ritualistic ways. I saw these men that were dressed like in regular clothing, and also one or two that were dressed in clothing that we would compare to holy men, like priests, like Jesuit priests. And it was the priest that took this child from their people to train him in their ways. He had this house where the church was that he had set up, and just nobody to monitor him. Like why did all these people come here alone? Right? In the beginning, all these men came alone. So it was their sport. They had asked for privacy on a particular island, and the first people, chiefs, agreed to it. They didn't know what they were agreeing to. And they would tie them to these different stones. They would do awful, awful things to them, hurt and torture their bodies, rape them in every single way. They would laugh, take their turns, drink, and then they would do this until the life force was gone, and they would either kill them, dump them in the water with a rock, or bury them alive. So this boy experienced that. He was sent there to learn, and they were screaming at him or yelling at him that he wasn't a boy because he had long hair. It didn't matter because he had long hair. That means he was a girl. He could be whatever they wanted. And they put him in this dress and they hunted him. So I was witness this. And then these children started coming out from the ground from the different ages wearing red dresses. We all know about the red dress campaign in the past. What is it, 3-4 years? 12,000 Indigenous women have gone missing or murdered, unresolved. This is connected to what I witnessed. This is connected to the beginning. Though our statistics in communicating about it is recent, so 12,000 doesn't even come close. This also has a lot to do with the beginning of child sex trafficking. Colonization and genocides and sex trafficking go hand in hand. For whatever reason, Spirit and my guides want me to witness this, and for whatever reason today they want me to talk about it. In the past, I don't even know how far, maybe 10 years, 20 years, 600,000 to 800,000 children and families have been sold to child sex trafficking or sold and kidnapped for their organs. This goes hand in hand with land genocide, land colonization. This is the pain we're feeling. I was meant to witness this so that I could share with people. It's unfortunate. But when we move forward, and we recognize these campaigns like No Child Should Be Left Behind, this is the beginning of all of it. This is the stuff we're healing. It doesn't matter if you are indigenous to this land or indigenous to your ancestral land where you're from, whether it be the Ukraine, China, the UK, India, Australia, North America, Turtle Island, South America. Everybody is indigenous to their family. We are all impacted by everything that's happened. We are all hurt by all of this. You know, when this stuff is not resolved, it actually creates so much of our disease and disharmony that is in the electric field around us. For example, the animal kingdom, where we are so brutally mistreating in corporate farming. So when you are eating this, how these animals are treated. You are eating rape. You are eating disenfranchisement. You are eating child stealing. When I was in New Westminster, BC in 2009, I was also shown things. So my family DNA on my Indigenous side is Tlingit and Haida. So it's a blend of cultures that are on the coast of the BC line. So these are the cultures that brought us things like sun dancing, raven dancing. The Haida were known for sacred geometry in the beginning of their civilization. The Tlingit are known for whale riding and making big canoes, and they're the totem pole culture. So they were the first responders. So I actually remember greeting the first ships that came here in my ancestral Akashic memory. I remember because I was a chief's daughter, it was part of my duty to show them hospitality. So I would show them different ways to travel along our lands and meet people, and I vouched for them. So this is a part of my own clearing, because in today, now I am Métis, so I am non-Indigenous, non-local Indigenous, and European Indigenous. So Irish, Scottish, I think there's some Spanish, as well as Tlingit, Haida, and I think some Cree. So I'm quite a blend, and this makes that means my DNA is aligned to heal the colonized and the colonizer. And I think it's so, so, so important that when we smudge or we do traditions on the land of the people, we have to recognize what the people of the land have gone through. So it was actually illegal to smudge until 1992. That's so recently. And these are one of the reasons why you walk in land with sacred manner. These are one of the reasons, like, you have to acknowledge where your teachings came from. This is one of the reasons why you have to acknowledge the people of this land, acknowledge that no child should be left behind, because the teachings of the land are calling to us, because it's in